Another brick in the wall is the Supreme Court upholds President Trump's reprogramming funds for the southern border wall. Democrats whine after they voted for it. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government. DailyTorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court and its decision on July 26 to approve and to allow for President Trump to reprogram military funds towards securing the southern border with the southern border wall. The court said the application for a stay presented to Justice Kagan by her referred to the court as granted among the reasons that the government has made a sufficient showing at the stage that the plaintiffs have no cause of action to obtain review of the acting secretary's compliance with Section 8005. This was Section 8005 of the DOD and HHS appropriations bill that was passed last fall. And it says, quote, upon determination by the Secretary of Defense that such action is necessary in the national interest, he may, with the approval of OMB, transfer $4 billion of working capital funds of the Department of Defense or funds made available in this act to the Defense Department for military functions. And amongst those military functions that the president cited when he declared a national emergency was support for counter-drug activities and activities to counter transnational organized crime under 10 U.S.C. Section 284. In my piece, I delineate what that was under subsection B7, which explicitly authorized, quote, construction of roads and fences to block drug smuggling corridors across international boundaries of the United States. So that's pretty clear law. You have reprogramming authorities, very common in appropriations bills that pass. It gives the executive branch a little bit more discretion to spend certain monies and to move things around. And just if, in the case of unforeseen events, for example, the amount of people who are flooding the southern border, hundreds of thousands of people are showing up in the past few months alone. Usually only about 50,000 are apprehended. So now you have far more people are coming across the border, and this is taxing federal resources. And so President Trump would like to put up some deterrents to future migration waves. As bad as the conditions are in Central America, it's not as if America can house every single person who's coming here. And so there is a reason to have border security. We're not going to let the whole world just come to America and say, we're here, we're going to stay now, we're going to live here, but there may not be enough resources for everybody. So you want to have a controlled immigration flow. You're going to want to have transparent immigration flows and people to apply for it, and for people to come here on the merits. How many workers does the economy need if we're not at full employment? Things like that. I think that having a sound immigration policy is a good thing. Americans for Limited Government supports that. So the funds, though, that the president has appropriated, that's $5.6 billion. The White House had also identified, besides the $2.5 billion for counter-drug activities, about $600 million from the Treasury Forfeiture Fund, and up to $3.6 billion reallocated from Department of Defense military construction projects under the president's declaration of a national emergency. That's from a White House fact sheet. And so you have $5.6 billion there, and then Congress itself has passed $1.6 billion in 2018 for replacing existing fences with new steel barriers, and then another $1.375 billion in 2019 for more steel barriers that were approved after the partial shutdown at the end of 2018. So as usually happens, President requests monies for certain things, and then Congress compromises. In 2018 and 2019 that occurred. And so Congress has approved some wall funding, but the president said that's not enough. I'm declaring an emergency, and I'm going to use my legal authority under federal law to reprogram monies for the $2.5 billion, which is what the Supreme Court decision was about, for counter-drug activities, building roads and fences on the southern border. And so now you have that's a lot of money. In addition, Congress has passed $4.5 billion that the Trump administration requested to deal with the humanitarian crisis on the border. So again, because there's so many people coming, there's not enough beds, You have hundreds of thousands of people showing up in the past few months. There's only 52,000 beds that Congress had provided funds for, so they needed more resources to take care of people. As the facilities are becoming overcrowded. And so you want to see deterrence to stop people from coming, and you need more resources to deal with the people who are being apprehended. And so Congress has played a role here, and they've been funding these things. But Nancy Pelosi, what she's saying, she's pretending like that Congress has no role whatsoever. This evening's Supreme Court ruling allowing real Donald Trump to steal military funds to spend on a wasteful, ineffective border wall was rejected by Congress. It's deeply flawed. Actually, no, it's a very good decision by the Supreme Court. There was no basis, no standing to bring this case, and the president's authority to reprogram monies under these appropriations bills is very, very clear. It's the Supreme Court basically chuckled it out of their court and said, you know what, there's not even standing here. There's no basis to bring a case against the president spending money that Congress has already appropriated. It's basically a political question, and one with which the president has discretion. And so I think that there's been legislative wins here, and then the president taking executive action within his legal authority to declare a national emergency under legislation, law that Congress has passed and was signed into law. So they've identified $8.1 billion of funding for the wall. And I think that's where we need to be right now. We need to be securing the southern border. And the Democrats, man, I mean, how are they going to explain to their voters that while they're calling for saying that President Trump is stealing military funds, Democrats voted for all of this stuff? Let's go through this. This is actually kind of humorous. So in 2018, the $1.6 billion that we mentioned, 111 Democrats voted for that. That's a majority. It's only 77 opposed. 145 Republicans voted yes. 90 said no. So that they voted for $1.6 billion for replacing existing fencing in 2018. The Senate, similarly, 65 to 32. Most Democrats voted for that. The people who voted against the 2018 omnibus bill, most of them were Republicans and on fiscal conservative grounds. But there was money for the wall there, and you know what? Democrats voted for that. Moving forward, in further appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security in 2019, this is the humanitarian bill. Actually, no, this is the further appropriations. This is the omnibus bill for 2019. 213 Democrats voted for that. 87 Republicans voted for it. So 300 to 128, that's pretty overwhelming. And Democrats, they supported that. They supported funding the federal government and reopening it. And in the Senate, very similarly, it passed 83 to 16. Those are really big numbers. But most of the people who voted for it were Republicans and Democrats. It was bipartisan. Most of the people who voted against it were Republicans, again, on fiscal conservative grounds, and a few presidential candidates who I think didn't want to be attached to a tough vote. Moving forward, supplemental appropriations. This is the 4.5 billion of humanitarian aid. 129 Democrats voted for that. 95 said no. 176 Republicans voted for it. 7 said no. So 305 to 102, overwhelming bipartisan support for helping to alleviate the southern border crisis and to provide humanitarian aid. On the Senate side, you've seen also another vote here, 83 to 16. This is an overwhelming vote of where it was, again, bipartisan. Most of the people who voted against it were Republicans, again, on fiscal conservative grounds. And time after time, every time the government's got an appropriations bill, they usually pass by veto-proof margins. If the president says he's going to veto something, then sometimes usually the members of his own party will help to sustain that veto. But in these bills, they usually pass pretty overwhelmingly. And then most recently, this defense appropriations bill that allowed for reprogramming of monies, the thing that the Supreme Court case was about, Democrats voted for that too. 176 Republicans, 56 noes. And then on the Democrat side, 185 Democrats voted for the bill that allows for reprogramming, and only 5 Democrats said no. So what are they complaining about? They're saying, oh, you're stealing military monies. No, you're not. No, they're not. President Trump is using the money that Congress provided and is reprogramming it, which the law allows him to do. And they voted for it. On the Senate side, again, 93-7 on the DOD budget for 2019. Very few people voted against it. All of them were Republicans, except for Bernie Sanders. He's the only one who voted against that. And so with the help of Congress, President Trump is getting the wall built. And by the end of 2020, the Army Corps of Engineers reports that there'll be 450 miles of wall built. And it's all because of legislation that Congress has passed. Some of it is from the National Emergency Declaration, but the bills that Congress approved allowed for that. They allowed for the reprogramming. And so when the rest of these cases come to the Supreme Court, if they get that far, they're going to uphold it again. I think that's what's happening. The president's building the wall, and Congress helped. Here's what Lieutenant General Todd T. Seminini, Chief Engineers and Commanding General of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. He was giving a report to President Trump at Calexico, California, on how much new wall would be constructed by the end of 2020. And he said around December of 2020, the total amount of money we'll have put in the ground in the last couple of years will be about 450 miles. That's probably about $8 billion in total, about 33 projects. So, and you know what? They couldn't get this done without Congress. They're voting for this stuff. You've seen it here. All of these votes, Democrats are voting yes on every single one of them. They can't say that they didn't vote to give President Trump the authority to reprogram. I mean, they did that. All of these votes. And so they can't complain. I mean, 185-5. Only 5 Democrats voted against the bill that allowed for reprogramming. It's not a stance that they took at the time. They didn't even think about it. But here's President Trump declaring the emergency and the Democrats saying, oh, you're stealing money. They're not stealing money. And so I'll leave you with the close here. In 2020, when Democrats are promising to tear down Trump's wall, which is getting built, the Army Corps says 450 miles by the end of 2020, they'll have to first explain to Democrats why they voted for it in the first place. They built that. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a great day.